Check, check. Mr. Mayor, 6 o'clock.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. At this time, I will call to order the Riverside City Council meeting for Monday, February 3rd, 2025. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Denning?
Here.
Ms. Fry? Here. Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Ms. Lomatch?
Yes.
Mr. Maxfield?
Present.
Mayor Williams?
Here. No absent members. Mr. Manager, any additions or corrections to the agenda as presented?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion for Mr. Joseph and a second for Mr. Maxfield to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. If you're able, please join us to rise and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We've all had a chance to look at the meeting minutes from our January 21st business meeting. Is there a motion to approve those as published?
Second.
We have a motion for Mr. Denning and a second for Mr. Joseph to approve the minutes as published. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. If there's any citizens with us tonight who'd like to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item, there are forms in the back of this room to fill out. Please turn them in to our clerk, who's located up on the dais with us. And we'll move on. Our agenda, public. Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I got it.
Don't even get enough, it don't work.
I take it.
There you go.
I got one. This gentleman here gave me one.
Are you good?
All right. Johnny on the spot back there, whoever you are, random citizen, thank you.
We need to purchase pens.
Yes, well, I want to go on the record and thank that random citizen for having a pen, whoever he may be. We'll move on the agenda. We have public comment on any agenda items. If there's anyone who wants to speak on an item that we are going to cover in tonight's agenda, we would hear that now. If not, we have a section of our meeting where we talk about things that are not on the agenda. So, Katie, we had one slip turned in for a non-agenda item,
That's what it
and we'll
looks
cover
like,
that in
yes.
just a minute. All right, so we will move on to new business, of which we have an ordinance and a resolution. Two resolutions, thank you, sorry. The first order of business is ordinance 25-0-865. Mr. Manager, if you could briefly talk about this housekeeping measure.
Yep, ordinance is 864. It's our annual housekeeping ordinance, which adopts the latest general offenses and traffic code for the city.
Motion to approve.
Second.
The city charter allows for the reading of an ordinance to be done by title only for the first reading, unless otherwise requested by a member of council. Madam Clerk, could you please read this ordinance by title only?
Ordinance number 250864, an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Riverside, Ohio, to provide amendments to the City Code, General Offenses Code, and Traffic Code, and approve current replacement pages to the codified ordinances of Riverside, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Is there any further discussion among members of council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Mr. Denning?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Ms. Lomatch?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes. Motion carries, and that was the first reading. Next, we have two resolutions. The first resolution, 25-R-3012. Mr. Manager, a quick synopsis.
This resolution would adopt the council handbook as discussed at the prior meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Joseph and a second from Mr. Brown. All those in favor of Resolution 25-R-3012, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And the second ordinance, ordinance 25-R-3013, Mr. Manager, goes to our zoning code rewrite, I believe.
Correct. This is a resolution which directs staff to move toward a hybrid code approach, which was also discussed at the prior meeting.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Denning and a second from Mr. Maxfield. All those in favor of Resolution 25-R-3013 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Moving along on our agenda, there are two slips, Katie? We have one down here and
Yes.
two slips for public comment on non-agenda items. The first one, I believe is it Jim? Jim Zugelder? Mr. Zugelder, thank you for joining us tonight. If you could, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you again for joining us.
My name is James Zugelder. I live at 382 Grange Hall Road, Beaver
Could you
Creek.
just pull the mic up?
Yeah, pull your mic up.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Thank you very much.
My name is James Zugelder. I live at 382 Grange Hall Road, Beaver Creek, Ohio. I took ownership of a property on 4917 Linden Avenue, and come to find out after I bought the property, it was a nuisance property. Didn't know that when I bought it. It wasn't disclosed at closing by the attorney who was representing the family. And so I came in here on November and sat down with Naya and asked, what can I build there and stuff, because it was rezoned to B2. And she gave me a thing. I turned in what my plans were. It was rejected, and that never happened. So then I was supposed to get back with her on January 21st, and I missed the date. I asked for an extension the week before, but then I had a lead abatement class I've been at the whole week. So I had my sister, Linda, who takes care of all my books at my business, and she signs my name all the time. Well, we turned in all the City of Riverside EPA. The only thing I didn't have yet is the site plan. And that came in today at 12:47, emailed to me by Van Atten Engineering. But she's rejected that, and she wants to go and give it to the city, or the land bank. Well, Paul Bradley from the land bank, who I do know, I do work for him, and he says, if I'm going to have an owner take care of the demo, I don't want to pay for it. I don't know why she's giving me a hard time. It's because I didn't sign her order to me in the matter of time that she gave it to me. But I was in class all week. And then she said I forged my name on the demo application. My sister Linda signed it. She signs everything. She signs checks. She signs more stuff for me than I sign for myself. Okay, she has a power of attorney to sign all that. Okay. And all I'm trying to do is get rid of a nuisance for the city of Riverside. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm paying out of my pocket. I don't have any funding, okay? But for some reason, she wants to turn it over to the land bank and have them do it and put it on my taxes. Well, I didn't have a price together for someone to tear it down. I was waiting on bids, so I finally got that. And here I am with everything I need, and she rejected my demo permit. Montgomery County has it. You guys have it, but it's been rejected. And I'd like to know what I need to do to get this moving forward.
Well, I know that our city manager and our law director, I'm sure would be, I'm just going to pause the clock for a minute, would be happy to cover this. One question I had, just to know, the signature that I'm guessing was James Zugelder.
Yes,
If it was signed by your sister, did it denotate power of attorney as well?
probably not. She signs my name on checks. She signs my name all the time. So
Okay, well,
it probably didn't.
then I could see where it'd be within the realm of likelihood that one of our employees would say, that this isn't your signature, I can't take it. And being ignorant to the other facts you might have revealed to us just now. But that being said, without getting into those details publicly, I'll ask the law director and the city manager on this type of matter. Would this be something that you two would be able to speak with Mr. Zugelder about, or work directly with him, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're happy to, Jim, the law director, and I are happy to kind of get with you and sort of take a look at what's happened and what we can do next. The complication with any property, especially a nuisance property, especially with the land, when the land bank is involved, and I don't know the specifics of your case, but just in general, if there are state grant dollars attached to some of these cases, that's where it can get hairy as far as where money is and kind of where the status is as far as cases.
Paul Bradley told me that he hasn't even applied for money, hasn't even done anything on that house, and he'd prefer me to tear it down, and he can use the funds somewhere else where they really need it.
And that's fair. I mean, but that would be something that we would get with you and review and,
Okay.
and kind of take a look at the specifics of what's going on, and we'll figure out how we can take a next step together.
And when do you want to sit down and talk about that?
We'll get with you. Actually, you can take one of our cards, or if you leave us we have your contact information, we can reach out to you, but we're happy to schedule that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, and next we have Paul Houston of 2326 Guernsey-Dell, who would like to speak to us.
How you guys doing?
Great, thank you for joining us tonight. If you could just say your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Paul Houston. I live at 2326 Guernsey-Dale, but I have a property on 2460 Forest Home too.
Okay,
But I live at Guernsey-Dale. Well, my problem is, you guys keep finding me. You guys find me $1,200 at my place on Forest Home, and I can't never get a hold of you guys. I've called you over and over and over. I can't get nobody to return my calls on anything. I want to know what exactly that you guys wanted me to fix, because you guys find me on my tree that I cut down. You guys find me for a broke window that I fixed. You guys find me for my grass, and it had snow on it at the time you guys find me. And then you find me $200 on my house. I work 70, 80 hours a week, and I can't get time to do everything. You guys find, when you guys got me on both properties at 1 week, I couldn't get time to do it all.
and if I might ask, Mr. Houston, was there anyone in particular that any of the violations requested you to get in touch with, a specific employee, or just call the office line?
Well, I try to get a hold of you guys, get extensions, everything else. When I call, I get some at the desk thing, but the main person will not return my calls.
Well, I mean, we can certainly fix that, and I'm
Okay,
looking at the city
I have
manager.
a $1,200 fine that you guys sent me that's supposed to be paid on the 14th. I have no clue how I'm gonna pay it because I have my property taxes due this month too. So I don't have no money to pay that. So what was the verdict gonna happen on that if I don't pay it?
I should just jump in and say that the purpose of fines is not to try to, it's really to try to get people's attention so that we can get to a place where our property is brought into compliance. I don't know the details of your case as I sit here today, but this is another situation where the law director and I are happy to take a look at it and review that and get back with you with options.
Okay.
But frequently, our approach is that if we've sent first notice, second notice, third notice, and there's still no compliance on the property, then our staff will automatically start moving to fines. There could be very good reasons why people are not able to comply. And again, our ultimate goal is to get to compliance and to properties that meet the code. It's
Right.
not just to find people willy-nilly, so.
But if somebody will return your call so you can talk to somebody, then you can get the problem solved quicker. I've been calling you guys since probably August.
If you can, I don't know if you have a record, but what would help me is if you've got dates and times that you've called and nobody's called you back or anything.
I usually
that's
call
something
about
else we can look
11:30 at my
into.
lunch break, and I usually call around 3:30 when I get off work.
Okay.
I can get records of it.
Yeah, that would help.
That would be very helpful
Because that'll
because-
help us track where they're coming from and where they're going, and that'll help us look into the issue, so.
So what can I do about the $1,200 fine you guys sent me on my property on Forest Home?
Yeah, we're gonna set up an appointment and meet with you to go over those details.
Okay, and plus, I have a tow truck, okay, and I got it sitting behind my privacy fence. They're trying to tell me that I'm not allowed to have it sitting behind my fence. You guys find me on that too?
Without looking at your case, sir, with all the details, I don't know that I can give you any kind of a satisfactory answer about that, but we will certainly look at it when we meet.
Okay,
That'd be the best time to go over it.
okay. Yeah, like I said, best time to get a hold of me is either at 11:30
Okay.
or 3:30 in the evening. I work at Mullins Rubber on the daytime, and then last 2 years I've been on overtime, and I've been working 70, 80 hours a week. Really ain't had time to do much.
Yep.
Mr. Houston, is your phone number, or the number on here correct that Mr. Roush could contact you at?
Yes.
All right, we'll make sure that he does that ASAP.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for bringing this to us.
Appreciate you. Thank you for coming.
All right, well, we certainly appreciate when folks bring concerns to our attention so we can see how we can help. We'll move on to discussion items, and I will turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bear with me as I get this posted up to our screen here real fast. So just a couple of items for discussion here this evening. The one I wanted to lead with is that, as you will recall, as part of the 2025 budget process, we set aside some funding, or council, I should say, appropriated some funding for us to pursue an organizational assessment to look at all the different departments in the city and kind of give us a check-in status report on staffing, process, efficiency, those sorts of questions. Really, we kind of talked about it a little bit during budget, but my sense of why this would be appropriate or necessary at this time is that there's a lot of talk in the community, and really since I've started here, about our police staffing and our fire staffing in particular. I know we have pinch points with public service or public works staffing as well. One of the ideas or the benefits of doing a study like this is that as we've kind of moved pieces around over the last 3 years, and as the market and the labor environment has changed for those services, it's a good opportunity for somebody to come in and look at our data, look at the calls we actually run, look at the work tickets we actually go perform when it comes to road maintenance and those sorts of things, and to give us some firm recommendations about how best to meet those needs based on service demands that we're actually experiencing. So in order to go forward, I'd like to put an RFP, a request for proposals or a request for qualifications out that really communicates to any consultant that would be qualified what the end goal of this process is and what do we want out of it. Having come from that world, I'll tell you it's very important to be very direct with your consultants about this is the deliverable that I want and these are the kinds of analysis that I want to be looked at so that you can hold them accountable for actually crunching the numbers and doing those sorts of things. So what I've prepared for you this evening, and I will email this to all of you as well, but the main idea is for us to tell the consultants that we want an organizational review, and we really want to look at, in particular, staffing levels based on service demands, how we are doing in-house functions versus contracting out. A good example of this would be information technology that's essentially entirely contracted out for us. You recall up until recently, legal services were entirely contracted out, right? So a look into which functions we are paying others to do for us versus doing ourselves in-house. We would like some focus on organizational structure. So that really is most relevant in the context of City Hall. So we have several administrative departments that are 1 to 2 people deep. So I have one person in HR, basically 2.5 in finance, a handful in community development, et cetera, et cetera. So part of what this is asking is the relationship of those employees and what level of responsibility they've been assigned and how many hats can or should people wear to do different kinds of functions. Recommendations about data gathering. So where are we strong? I can tell you that our fire department in particular, their RMS system is very, very strong. We're able to query that pretty rapidly. Police also collects quite a lot of data, but because of how it's parsed through Huber Heights and the dispatch system, it can sometimes be a little bit harder to get a hold of. So we would ask a consultant to look at that for us and maybe give us recommendations that we could go talk to dispatch about. Similar in the service department, we are moving more and more toward proactive work order system. So to try to get proactive work planning and then responding to work orders to try to get a sense of that. And I think it would be helpful just to get a temperature check, organizational culture and employee-wise, do an employee survey, and just try to get perspectives from the employees about how well things have been going. I think I've made a remark, I don't know if it was at a public meeting or not, but I think it's fine to say that I've been here now for a little more than 3 years. Much of the work that we've been doing has involved kind of rebuilding the structure of this place. And I now feel like I've been in it long enough where I've sort of built it up, but now I'm looking at from the outside in as opposed to from the inside out as opposed to the outside in. And so just that change in perspective would help. So what we're going to ask our consultant to do is give us really detailed recommendations, which we will ask them to support with rigorous data analysis and evaluation of best practices, really just to look at how are we structured, what staffing level should we have in order to meet our service demands, and how can we do a better job of going about data gathering, workflow improvements, and associated tasks like that. I'm going to ask them to put all of that together in an implementation plan, so to list all the recommendations in a priority order, what do we need to tackle first, second, third. And then here I've kind of identified some high-level things that I'd like to have, and asking the department heads that they'd like to have somebody look at within each of our major functions. So in administration, again, it's going to be how are we dividing our administrative tasks, what are we contracting out, and particularly with respect to IT security, given the prevalence of hacks, and we went through an attack back in 2018, I want to say. So, organizationally, we've had that experience. Some of our neighbors have more recently. What can we do better on that front? In finance, looking at our budget process, looking at our processes for AP and payroll, our asset management and how we manage contracts. In community development, it'll be how do our core functions like economic development and code enforcement all relate to each other and service delivery there. In the service department, again, structure and staffing levels. And the data gathering piece will also be very important in the public service / public works department. Honestly, although it's a terminology thing, I think that's an important question to ask. In my experience, typically a public service department doesn't do utilities. We're moving more and more into a utility space between stormwater and solid waste. So having them also examine that, I think, would be helpful. And we do some really major lifting, so especially with respect to highway maintenance. That's a function that we perform now, especially on Route 4, that takes a lot of time and candidly a lot of equipment and expertise that we don't necessarily have very deep capacity for. And that would be important to have somebody look into as well. And in police and fire, just looking again at shift schedules, staffing levels in comparison to our calls, and whether or not our staffing approach in those departments fits the call profile, and if we have an alternative staffing approach or a different level of staffing that would be better to meet those call demands, what would that be? And to run the math on all of those numbers. I think what that would tell us is at the end of this analysis, it would give us all some better insight into whether we do need additional officers, whether those would be patrol. I know there's been some discussion about maybe adding school resource officers. I'll tell you just from experience that there's a part of me that suspects that they may come back and say our detectives might be a little bit overworked. I don't know, but getting some of that insight would be helpful. And it's the same in fire, based on how many pieces of apparatus we're trying to run for medic and fire calls, what's the right number of people to have, and how should they be deployed. So I will email this document to you all. One of the critical pieces that I think is really important is that I don't want to publish an RFP or a scope like this entirely in a vacuum. While this report will be really helpful for staff in the community, I want to be sure you all have input in that process as well as our policy leaders and as the governing body. So I'm happy to take a couple minutes if there are things off the top of your head that you are interested in or that you think would be helpful to have a third party come in and look at as part of this process. I'm happy to have that conversation. We can take notes. Alternatively, I'll go ahead and email this to you, and I would just ask that over the next couple of weeks, marinate with it a little bit, and then when we meet again on the 18th, I can bring it up. If you send me any feedback that you have before the meeting on the 18th, I'll make some additions to that, and then we can go over it one more time before I publish the RFQ for folks to bid on. But I just want to be sure that we're uncovering everything that's in council's interest to be uncovered. It doesn't do any of us any good if we kind of develop something and then it's, but we didn't look into this thing that's really important to me. So to the extent that there are things of shared importance to council that you'd like us to look at, I think we've got a good opportunity to talk those over now and try to get some insight.
Is this something in your experience you'd see, like all of these elements done in one project?
Yes.
Okay.
You can do them individually, but what I would say is given our size, we're right around 100 employees, maybe a little bit less. That's perfectly doable in one scope.
Yeah. Okay. I was going back in my head. I'm like, definitely size and scope. I was just cute because I've done organizational studies on bigger police departments, and that was just one thing. So
Yep.
It makes more sense that companies would do a city of our size and all at once.
The other advantage I'll say that you get to doing them all at once is that it's easier for your consultant to look at how the departments relate to each other and then to give you recommendations about how they can work together maybe more effectively. I had to write some reports myself where we weren't allowed to talk to this department, we could only talk to that department, and then you're kind of writing in a vacuum because you don't really know what that relationship is like. So doing it all at once, I think, provides that holistic perspective.
And this would be one consultant probably doing all of these?
Yes, that would be my goal. I would not want to have anybody sub it out, if we can help it. There may be, the market has changed since I was in the game, candidly, but there are still several medium-sized firms that this is right up their alley that we can go chase. And then I would obviously work NLC, ICMA, the other professional networks to try to get it out there so that we get as broad of a pool as possible.
And the timeline for getting feedback back to you?
Yes, anytime in the next 2 weeks, feel free to call or email me, and then I'll incorporate any feedback you have into this document, and we'll talk about it again next meeting. And at that point, too, it may help, just after we've all been through it, to have a motion, just so that council basically accepts that as what I plug into our RFQ, and we've got agreement there as well.
Okay, so we have a couple weeks to mull over this and get with Josh if we have questions or suggestions.
Perfect.
All right, everybody all good? Moving along to solid waste services.
All right, for solid waste, I will turn it over to Ms. Moore, and I'll pull up a PowerPoint that will accompany this. Take it away,
All
Beth.
right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we are talking trash, one of my favorite subjects. So just to bring us up to date of our current contract, so next slide. So our current contract expires the end of this year. Some highlights from it, 3% annual increase, residential participation not required, commercial participation optional, toters not required, bulk pickups require pre-scheduling, a yard waste option for the 90-gallon bags or limbs cut and bundled into 4 feet lengths, senior discount at 10%, a house side collection option for an additional fee, includes our RTA stops, it's about 20 of those. Billing is quarterly. There was an annual payment option at a 4% discount, and it includes invoicing and collection. So that's our current contract.
It's a toter.
Cart, like a rolling cart. The
Your
big,
bin,
the
the
big, the
big
big
trash
bin
cans.
on wheels with the flip-up
You
lift.
said it is required?
It currently is not required.
Whatever kind of trash can you want to have out there.
You pay extra for that.
Yes.
See, I called them. They said like they have to have a specific can. They lied to me.
So, the trash equipment and vehicles, it's a huge amount of money, the staffing levels. So even though we expire at the end of this year, in order to solicit bids, if anyone else were to be interested in that contract, now's the time to start figuring out what we're doing. So we could have the same process that we did the last time, or we have an option of joining the Center for Local Government. They have a group called the Southwest Ohio Regional Refuse Consortium. There's actually 3 different groups within this group where cities and townships, you join together, so you have a joint bid. We all have services in common that we need, but then you also have a section where you list the services specific to your community. For example, we might say, oh, we have 5 parks. We want a 6-yard dumpster at each, and we want it emptied once a week. So you can have all your services that you want in common, then you can have the ones specific to you. So the governments bid together, but then each government awards an individual contract. So those 3 groups, there is a group that's coming due at the end of this year that we would have the option to join in with them. The benefits, boy, it's a lot of work to write an RFP, go through all that. And I think the other benefit is that joint buying power. So I've previously participated in this and it's been very effective. The local Dayton area communities that are currently participating in this are Brookville, Bellbrook, and Miamisburg, and they've been in it for a number of years. So, looking at that, just wanted to have council start to think about this and kind of decide, do we want to go on our own? Would we like to join the CLG? It's a small joiner's fee of a couple $100s, so it's not that much money out of our pocket. And then they do all the work of putting it together. We all get a seat at the table to evaluate the bids, and then we can choose to select a vendor, or we don't have to either, so we're not obligated. But the time is ticking, so if we want to go alone, what the industry best practice is to give them at least 6 months' notice if we are changing vendors. So my target would be to get the RFP out April 15th, and then to actually issue a new contract by June 1st if we were to go on our own. So talk about it, think about it, get some feedback back to Josh over the next couple weeks. I have a call with the CLG next week to kind of talk through joining in the group we would actually join with this time. Like I said, they have 3 groups. It's their Hamilton County group. It doesn't really matter that we'd be in with other Hamilton County jurisdictions. There are very few players in the area in the residential refuse collection. All waste generated in Montgomery County has to go through the Montgomery County Solid Waste Transfer Station, and most residential waste ends up at Rumpke in Cincinnati. So very few players, limited options for who would potentially bid on our city. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or any feedback you have now, which direction we would be interested in pursuing.
So doing this as a group is like when we aggregated our electric or our gas.
Exactly.
So there's a possibility that it would be a cost savings to the community. Now, do we get to, what about recycling versus I mean, that's all part.
It's all part of
There's a
the.
questionnaire that we'll get to say whether or not we want to do all that, and
Right. Do you want weekly service? Do you want unlimited bulk? Do you want a call-ahead bulk? Do you want any type of yard waste collection? So all those different options we will get to go through. And next week, when I have the meeting with them, I'll find out more details of what specifically, there are certain things they're going to include for everybody. For example, weekly curbside solid waste pickup. Right, that'd be a given, but there's all types of options beyond that we can make specific to our community. And I've been working with community development because I think residential solid waste collection, it's an opportunity to make a difference, to allow waste disposal and recycling, work successful for our citizens. And so I think we really have to work together to figure out what is that mix of services that's successful. Evaluate what hasn't worked during this past contract, and then talk to our neighbors about what has worked.
Would we still be able to make the June target timeline if we go with the group and then decide that that's not what we ultimately want to do, and then we go our own after?
Unlikely, no. A trash truck costs about $500,000.
I think the question was whether if we decided to go with the group, but then wanted to back out of that, would we still have enough time to go forward and do a bid on our own? And I believe the answer is no, that would be too tight.
No.
Due to the way the timelines stack up. So we basically have to pick.
That's what I understood her to say.
Yep.
And our current vendor, Republic, I have been talking with them. They indicated that when we issued this contract 5 years ago, or that we really did not allow them adequate time. We did not award a contract until October. And it is all the vendors are struggling with finding drivers, CDL drivers. So the equipment and staffing up, really, we want to allow that whoever the successful vendor is to be successful. So we really want to give them the full amount of time is my recommendation.
Beth, can you talk a little bit about our ability to customize, or what options we may have to make some custom selections under the CLG process?
The customization could be anything like dumpsters at the parks, RTA can trash shops, recycling, size of your cart, 32, 64, 96. Using carts or allowing people not to use carts. 1 free bulk item a week, 3 free bulk items a week. It's really whatever we make it, we can bake that into our Riverside-specific proposal.
Does Republic have an option for yard waste and leaf removal for them not to be bundled, like to just sweep to the curb, or is that an option with them?
No current solid waste vendors offer loose curbside leaf collection.
And I think from our perspective too, I would say on balance, having looked at sort of where we are and where the market's at, and in trying to distinguish between these two processes, I think from where we sit, it's fair to say that the CLG process probably offers the best balance of customizability, so we still get some flexibility in terms of what we're asking for, but also buying power. In terms of, it's not just Riverside's 24,000 residents, it's us plus the others that are also going out for bid to try to get a higher level of service at a more competitive price. So really, I think unless there's really significant heartburn or council has a really strong desire to sort of go it alone, our recommendation would be to continue to basically move forward with CLG. And as long as there's consensus with that, then we would follow that timeline.
I support that.
Me too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. And the always brief other items listed by the city manager, known for their brevity.
There actually is another brief, and I might have Beth talk about this a little bit too.
She already hit a home run.
Well, she did.
She doesn't have to come back up to the plate
She did,
yet.
but she's good for 2, I promise. This one's actually some pretty good news. So Beth, if I can maybe put you on the spot for an update on Woodman Phase 1?
Sure. So we have Project Woodman Phase 1 and ODOT let. Bids were received January 30th. And that covers the section of Woodman from really where the interchange capital project left off at 35 to Eastman. It includes a lot of road work, stormwater management, some improvements for safety, for pedestrians, RTA stops and all that, which all are currently lacking. So bids were received the 30th. ODOT's looking to award the low bidder on the 10th of this month, and then begin construction in April. And that construction completion date would be September 30th of 26. Now, we anticipate it'll be done next summer, but they always put a pretty long end date on those to get the punch list done. So if we want to jump to the next slide, the budget, the original construction estimate, and this is 2 years ago when they first started planning, was about $6.3 million. The actual low bid came in at 4.75, so that's huge. We had budgeted $500,000 as our city participation local match, and we have just prepaid our local match of approximately $297,000. So the good news of all this, I think, tells 2 stories. One, the bids were very competitive. And some range from above the ODOT estimate to below, but they received 7 bids. So that's a very strong competitive market. The low bidder is well-known and does good work. And that $4.7 million, I think, is indicative of where the pricing is at on these road construction projects, and that's positive, because you think for years we've seen them come in. I've had to rebid multiple projects in the past because it's over the engineer's estimate. So I think good news, the projects in general, road construction, at least for now, looks pretty good. It came in low. And the other good news on that is that even if we encounter some unknowns and have to have some change orders in this project, which are the burden of the city to pay, our prepaid amount of the $297,000, we don't anticipate having to spend any more than that. So I think good news all around. The project came in low. Any unknowns that we encountered will be covered by our prepaid, and then, we can move forward with confidence in the budget. And that's always been kind of scary for the past couple of years since COVID. So we have, really, we're just looking forward to the bid being awarded and then moving forward to support that project. It'll be a traffic nightmare again, right? But traffic will flow both ways during the entire project. Might be down to a single lane in one direction, but traffic will keep moving, and in the end, we'll have one more stretch of Woodman complete.
I do think it's important to just re-emphasize, though, as well for folks at home, that although that looks like a $2 million savings, that's not $2 million that comes back to the city. The way these road programs work is you have an estimated price tag of, let's say, $6 million, and then as the city, our job is to go chase as many grants as possible to try to bring our local share of that number down. So in some ways, what this means is that we have more grant available to us than we're likely to spend, is another way to kind of think about this. But having said that, we had budgeted up to $500,000 for this project, trying to be very conservative, because if the project would have come in not at 4 million, but at 8, like let's just say that inflation was still really hitting these projects hard, then we would have basically had to give you an update that would have been the opposite of this, to say, actually, we're probably going to use our full budget amount, not just our initial payment. So the good news, as Beth mentioned, is that what we're seeing is the market appears to be shifting in a way that's positive for us, and especially as we're looking for other projects or other opportunities like out at Woodman and Springfield and our other major corridors. So what that means is we may have a couple $100,000 that we budgeted for this year for this project that we won't have to use. That's not enough to go do a whole new road, but it definitely saves us a little bit of money that we can apply to some other infrastructure project farther down the line. So just wanted to be ultra clear about that. We did not magically get $2 million, unfortunately, as much as we'd all love it.
Was there an
just the way
update
the
about,
grants work.
was there an AES property right-of-way update?
Yes, and
You wanted to mention?
we'll talk about some of that actually here shortly, but that is one of the outstanding items on that project. We have the right-of-way to go for construction. There's an outstanding right-of-way acquisition element that we need to discuss as far as permanent access, because part of this project involves updating the intersection at Eastman and Woodman, and that's right where McGregor Park is, which is in Dayton, I might add, but that's part of the conversation that we'll be having here. It's like the last outstanding item.
Entryway up to Woodman today. I saw 2. I'm telling you, God was with the drivers, because you cannot see around the bridge. And I don't know if we can put a flasher up there or something to get people's attention, because they just cruise up there and automatically, you wonder if they even look at the signs. If we could do anything to, and there have been accidents there, if we could do anything to make it more relevant to the upcoming driver to pay attention, because the hanging up sign, if you're in some vehicles, you don't see that sign.
You're talking about the no turn on red,
Yeah.
right as you exit the ramp?
Right.
Yeah, and they've been.
And I watched 2 cars today that I promise you, I could see the tops of cars coming on the bridge, but obviously they didn't, or thought they could outrun them.
Well, and I know that was something that, I don't want to put words in ODOT's mouth, but my recollection is that was something that they were looking at, basically just to see whether or not they would need such a sign, and I think they decided they did.
Yeah, they didn't have one for the first.
For a
Yeah.
while,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we're happy to bring that up.
Well,
to them
I
as
just, we need to do something to get the attention of the driver, because we're going to continue to have issues there. And I watched 2 near, I mean, I don't know how, somebody was watching over them. And the other thing is, I think, on the trash, they may talk about how long it took 5 years ago, but they also own some of the responsibility for that. So they can't be throwing daggers at anybody else in this council, because they own part of that delay. Please continue to keep the senior discount in, because if a senior pays with the discount and pays by the year, I mean, you can't get a better service. If you pay it by the year and you get your senior discount, I'm going to haul my trash somewhere else. And I know we do get occasional occasional complaints on Facebook about the trash. But I have to say, having lived in my house for a long time, I cannot argue with the service that we've gotten. And my neighbors don't complain either. The only problem comes when we have a delay, and we can't control the weather. So I'm really, but I want them to own some of that responsibility of the.
I can agree. After having lived in Dayton for 18 years, they were, let's just say, they left a little bit to be desired in some of their services. We lived in a cul-de-sac, so I understand, everyone's missing every once in a while, but it was pretty normal, unfortunately. In the 4 years I've lived in Riverside, or 5 years now, we've had no issues with Republic either, and we're happy with the service. So.
Republic has done an excellent job. I've been amazed at how few complaints we've had since I've been here. So kudos to them for doing a good job.
I mean, even to the point to where I've heard stories about, some of the drivers seeing some of the people who forgot to pull their trash can out. They'll actually run up the driveway and grab the can and pull it down for them.
Literally me last week.
Yeah, and
Like, I watched the guy, I was like, oh, crud, the trash is here, I'm gonna miss it. Like, kid, jumped out of the car.
jumps up, runs up and grabs it and
Yeah,
dumps
they got
it.
good folks.
Yeah, just good people.
All right, Mr. Manager, any other items?
Just a few really quick ones. So as most folks may know, Ms. Baker, Kim Baker, our finance director, did let us know that she is departing our organization to pursue another opportunity in the private sector. You folks may recall, she came from the private sector, wanted to try her hand at government, and I think accomplished more for us in the last 20 months than I think any of us could have hoped or dreamed for. And a big part of the reason why I'm able to sit here today with the budget that we have and the finances that we have and the accounting system and all the process improvements that we've been able to make behind the scenes that folks might not realize is really due to her and her expertise and her effort. And so I do want to acknowledge that we are very, very grateful to her for all of that service and really living into a spirit of public service, candidly, in a way that you would hope that all of your civil servants do. So she's been a lighthouse for this organization as far as culture and the expectations that we're trying to set. And I am personally very grateful to her for all of her efforts. We will have our next meeting on a Tuesday because of President's Day, so that will be February 18th. That will be a busy meeting. We have several presentations and swearing-ins. I have spoken with Chief Robinson about voluntary gun storage. He will have something prepared for that meeting and a couple other updates as well. So just put a pin in the calendar for that, and that's all I have.
All right. Any questions for the city manager on the few things he just briefed us on before we moved into council member discussion?
Since Kim will be gone by the time we meet again, I just want to come out and just, I think I've spoken her praises very heavily in the past. I've worked with a myriad of people in her position, consulted with them, worked with them consistently, and we were really lucky to have had her. It's not a large finance department here. Kim is really at the helm of everything, and what you often see in an organization our size is that it is extremely hard to find the time to get into the strategic side of your job, because you're often focused in the day-to-day operations, your journal entries that need done, your banks that need reconciled, which, she came in here and got our banks up to date, which that task in and of itself could have cost the city
First time ever.
tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars that she did herself, because she knows what she's doing. So she saved us a boatload of money on accomplishing that, and she did it in a relatively no time at all. And her being able to keep up with the day-to-day operations of her job, and then from where she started and then where we're at now and overall with our financial operations, it's a true testament to who she is as an employee, her new company, whoever it is. Kim, send this link to them. You're extremely lucky to have her. This wasn't, I don't think any of us signed off on her leaving, but it's going to be definitely a lot of big shoes to fill, to say the least. So I wanted to say, I'll probably say this to her in person on Friday, but just for public record, that she's definitely going to be missed here in the city.
All right, well, that kind of puts us right into our council member discussion or comments section, and Zach, unless you have other comments you want to make in addition to that, thank you for that praise of Kim. I'll look to my right and see if there's anyone who has any council members that have comments.
The community school day on Saturday, 10 to 1,
Mhm.
free for everyone, including lunch and pizza. Be a lot of hands-on activities for young people, provided by companies. It's an amazing event. If you haven't been, it's an amazing event. And I hope that the blood drive was successful today.
It was hopping. I unfortunately was not able to donate today.
Me either.
My hemoglobin was a little bit low, but I was so excited to see a full bus. Hopefully, we did well and we were able to meet our goals. But our next blood drive will be April 7th. So same deal, right before council meeting. So it's a great opportunity to support both endeavors.
Well timed.
Yes.
And there's been a shakeup in the RPC, and appears that I will continue as chair until December.
All right, Mr. Brown, anything from you?
No comments from me this time. Thank you, though.
All right. Mr. Maxfield?
Nope.
Anything in addition, Deputy Mayor?
Yes. Starting this coming weekend, the Girl Scouts will be out in your community delivering those Girl Scout cookies. The cookie booths will start the next weekend, not this weekend, but the next weekend. So I just encourage everyone to support these young entrepreneurs and let them take the lead. Ask them the questions. The adults are there to help them, but really this is an experience for them to learn entrepreneurship, and your support absolutely matters. So.
Wonderful. Mr. Denning?
No, I just want to say kudos to Kim again. I don't remember whether we had the quadruple copies last year or not, but I know we got printed W-2 forms this year, and I was really happy with that because it's something that I had been asking for a very long time, and that just shows that we finally made it to the 20th century. And we know that Josh, you and she had a lot to do with moving us forward and making that happen. And she was going to be greatly missed. And like Zach said, there's going to be some big shoes to fill. And I also want to give her kudos for our investments. We had never been investing our extra money anywhere, just been sitting there gaining very little interest, and now
were paying a
we're
fee.
gaining, we're actually gaining.
We were paying
some-
fees for our money, so
Yes,
we're not getting.
and so we're making money, and it's still
strategy,
protected by the
yeah,
state of
amazing.
Ohio, and I think that just in itself was useful.
All right, we have on our agenda that we're going to go into executive session. Before we do that, I want to take the opportunity, since Beth is here, there was a really nice article in the Dayton Daily News about what's happening at Roar Park, and Beth, thank you so much for stewarding that process along with our parks volunteers. So that was very nice, and I know that many folks in that neighborhood are excited for those improvements coming. So Beth, congratulations, and thank you again.
Thank you. The RFP is out, so we are waiting for the bids to roll in, so I'm super excited.
As are many, many folks. So thank you for that leadership. At this time, we will go into executive session for the reason listed on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right? Yeah, those, Madam Clerk, those two?
Mr. Denning?
Yes.
Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Ms. Lomach?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes, we are in executive at